Hey everyone, and welcome back to Spicy Vibes After Dark, the podcast where we have honest conversations about intimacy, relationships, confidence, and everything in between. Grab a comfy seat and your favorite drink because we are diving into an excellent topic tonight. Go ahead, pause the podcast, go ahead and grab your favorite drink. Okay, now get comfy and get settled in. Because before we go ahead and dive in, I want to tell you that I'm super excited that you're here because today marks my 10th episode of Spicy Vibes After Dark. And as I mentioned in my last episode, I intentionally have not added video. Well, I thought it was time to reveal the face behind the voice that you've been listening to as it marks my 1 year anniversary since I created my own business, Spicy Vibes. And what better way to celebrate than with my listeners? So I want you to raise your glass and let's toast to new adventures as we continue building this safe space. Cheers. All right. Today's episode is one where I think a lot of people need to hear, but maybe haven't realized it yet. We're talking about guilt, not the guilt of making a mistake, not the guilt of forgetting someone's birthday or eating an extra piece of cake. I'm talking about the guilt that so many people carry around when it comes to wanting affection, intimacy, pleasure, or simply just taking time for themselves. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that putting ourselves first is selfish, that everyone else's needs should come before our own, that asking for what we want is too much, that enjoying pleasure somehow makes us a bad partner, a bad parent, and even a bad person. And today, I want to challenge that because here's the truth. Pleasure isn't selfish. It's human. Whether you're single, dating, married, divorced, or somewhere in between that mix, your emotional and physical well-being matters just as much as everyone else's. Yet so many people, especially us women, carry this invisible weight. They spend their days taking care of everyone around them. They work, they raise children, they manage households, they care for aging parents. They answer everyone else's phone calls. They remember birthdays, they solve problems, they give and they give and they give some more. And at the end of the day, when someone asks what they need, they don't even know how to answer. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've gotten so used to putting yourself last that you've forgotten what it even feels like to choose yourself. If that's the case, I need you to hear this. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to enjoy intimacy. You're allowed to experience pleasure without apologizing for it. And that doesn't make you feel selfish. It makes you whole. One of the biggest misconceptions that I hear as an intimacy coach is that pleasure is something that's earned. People tell themselves, I'll focus on myself once the kids get older. After work maybe slows down, after the house is cleaned, after everything else gets done. But here's the problem. There will always be another responsibility, another email, another load of laundry, another appointment. If you keep waiting until everything else is finished before you take care of yourself, you'll be waiting forever. And pleasure isn't just about sex. That's something I really want everyone listening to understand. Pleasure is feeling connected to your own body. It's feeling desired. It's laughing with your partner. It's hugging someone a little longer. It's taking a hot bath without knocking on the door every 5 minutes. It's reading a book. It's dancing in your kitchen. It's buying yourself flowers. Okay, I'll leave the singing to Miley Cyrus. But taking care of yourself because you deserve care, not because you earned it. When we think about pleasure this way, it becomes so much bigger than intimacy. It becomes part of living a healthy, balanced life. Throughout today's episode, we're going to unpack where all this guilt comes from, why so many of us carry it, how it affects our relationships, and most importantly, how we can finally let go. Because imagine what life could look like if you stopped apologizing for taking care of yourself. Imagine how different your relationships would be if you could show up feeling fulfilled instead of emotionally exhausted. Imagine what intimacy could feel like if guilt wasn't sitting in the room with you. That's what we're going to explore today. So if you've ever felt guilty for wanting affection, for asking for more intimacy, for buying something that made you feel confident, for taking an hour to yourself, or simply for believing that your happiness matters too, this episode's for you. So again, make sure you have your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's start letting go of the guilt. One belief at a time. So now that we've talked about what guilt feels like, let's ask the bigger question. Where does it actually come from? Because here's the thing. Very few of us are born believing that our needs don't matter. That's something we learn, like a learned behavior. And over time, those messages become so familiar that we stop questioning them. We simply accept them as truth. For many people, those messages start in childhood. Maybe you were praised for always being the good kid. Maybe you were the one that didn't ask for much, or the one that stayed quiet, or the one that put everyone else first. Maybe you learned that being helpful earned you love, while expressing your own needs felt selfish or inconvenient. Without realizing it, those childhood lessons can follow us into adulthood. Suddenly, asking for affection becomes uncomfortable. Speaking up about your needs feels demanding, and making time for yourself comes with that extra side of guilt. Then there are messages we receive from society. We're constantly surrounded by images of people who seem to have it all together. The perfect spouse, the perfect parent, the perfect employee, the perfect friend. Somehow we're expected to show up for everyone, smile through the exhaustion, and never admit that we need anything ourselves, especially us women. Women are often celebrated for sacrificing, for giving, for nurturing, for carrying the emotional load. And while those qualities are beautiful, somewhere along the way, many people started believing that taking care of themselves somehow takes away from taking care of others. But it doesn't. Think about it this way. If your phone battery is sitting at 1%, how useful is it? Not very. Eventually, it shuts down. People aren't any different. You can't continuously pour your energy into someone else while ignoring your own needs and expect to feel emotionally connected, physically present, or mentally healthy. Eventually, you become exhausted, resentful, disconnected, and sometimes you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Another place guilt often comes from is shame. Now, guilt and shame are actually different because guilt says, I did something wrong, but shame says, something is wrong with me. That's a huge difference. Maybe someone made you feel embarrassed for talking about intimacy. Maybe your questions were dismissed. Maybe pleasure was treated like something inappropriate instead of something healthy and natural. Or maybe you grew up in an environment where conversations about sex, relationships, or your body simply didn't happen at all. When we don't have the healthy conversations, our minds fill in the blanks. And unfortunately, those blanks are often filled with fear, embarrassment, or misinformation. Then we carry those beliefs into our adult relationships. We hesitate to communicate. We avoid those difficult conversations. We fake being okay. We apologize for having needs. We convince ourselves that asking for more affection, more connection, or more intimacy makes us difficult. But here's something I want you to think about. Would you ever tell someone you love that they don't deserve happiness? Would you tell your best friend they should feel guilty for wanting to be loved? Would you tell your daughter, your sister, or someone you cared about that taking care of themselves makes them selfish? Probably not. So why do we say those things to ourselves? Sometimes we are our harshest critics. We hold ourselves to impossible standards that we'd never expect from anybody else. And here's the truth. Sometimes guilt isn't even ours. Sometimes it's inherited. It's passed down through generations. And maybe your parents heard those messages from their parents, and their parents heard it from theirs. Without meaning to, we repeat beliefs we've never stopped to examine. We've never stopped to question. But just because you've carried guilt for years doesn't mean you have to carry it forever. Awareness is the first step, because once you recognize where those beliefs came from, you can begin asking yourself a powerful question. Is this belief actually true? Or is it something I've been taught? That question has the power to change everything, because healing often begins the moment we stop accepting guilt as our identity. And instead, we start choosing something different. We start choosing compassion, confidence, connection, and the belief that our needs matter too. In this next segment, we're going to talk about what happens when guilt quietly takes over our relationships and why letting go of it doesn't just change your intimacy, it changes the way you show up in every area of your life. Now that we've talked about where guilt comes from, let's talk about something that completely changes the way you think about self-care. Because one of the biggest myths out there is that if I put myself first, I'm taking away from the people I love. But what if the opposite is true? What if taking care of yourself is actually one of the best things you can do for your relationship? Think about it for a second. Who gets the best version of yourself? Is it your partner? Or is it everyone else throughout the day? So many people wake up, rush through their morning, pour everything they have into work, take care of the kids, answer phone calls, run errands, make dinner, clean the house, and solve everyone else's problems. By the time they finally sit down with their partner at the end of the night, they're exhausted. Not because they don't love their partner, not because they don't want intimacy, but because they've spent the entire day giving every ounce of themselves away. And that's something so many couples experience. It's not that the love is gone. It's not that there's nothing left in the tank. Imagine trying to pour water from an empty pitcher. No matter how badly you want to fill someone else's cup, you can't pour what you don't have. The same is true for us. If we're emotionally drained, physically exhausted, mentally overwhelmed, it's incredibly difficult to be present, affectionate, playful, or emotionally available. Self-care isn't about escaping your responsibilities. It's about making sure you have the energy to show up for them. And let's be clear about something. When I say self-care, I'm not talking about those extravagant vacations or those expensive spa days. I mean, those things are wonderful if they're available to you, but that's not what I'm talking about. Self-care can be simple. It might be a 20-minute walk after dinner, reading a chapter of a book, listening to your favorite music or podcasts while you're driving home. Saying no to something would leave you feeling overwhelmed. Scheduling your own doctor's appointment instead of putting it off for 6 months. Getting enough sleep. Moving your body. Eating a meal before everyone else's needs take over. Or simply giving yourself permission to rest without feeling guilty. Those little moments matter, because when you start caring for yourself consistently, something begins to change. You feel more confident, more patient, more connected to yourself. And when you're connected to yourself, it's so much easier to be connected with someone else. That confidence is attractive, but it's not because of how you look. It's because of how you carry yourself. When you feel good about who you are, you communicate differently. You laugh more, you flirt more, you become more open to giving and receiving affection. You stop operating from a place of survival and start living from a place of intention. And your relationships feel the difference. Here's another thought. Sometimes we believe that love means sacrificing everything for our partner. But healthy love isn't about losing yourself. It's about growing together while still honoring who you are as an individual. Your relationship should be made up of two whole people choosing each other, not two exhausted people hoping the other one will fill what's missing. Your partner cannot be responsible for your happiness every day, and you can't be responsible for theirs. That's just too much pressure on any relationship. The healthiest relationships happen when both people take ownership of their own well being while supporting each other's growth. And here's something that I think is really important to remember: taking care of yourself also gives your partner permission to do the same. When they see you setting boundaries, prioritizing your mental health, making time for the things that bring you joy, you're modeling what a balanced life looks like. You're saying it's okay for both of us to have needs. And that's a beautiful thing. Because relationships thrive when both people feel fulfilled, not when one person is constantly running on empty. So today, I want to leave you with a simple question. What is one thing you could do this week that's just for you? Not because you've earned it, not because everything on your to-do list is finished, but simply because you're worthy of care. Maybe it's 10 quiet minutes with your morning coffee. Maybe it's that fitness class you've been putting it off. Maybe it's buying yourself flowers. Maybe it's scheduling time with friends. Or maybe it's simply allowing yourself to say, I matter too. Because you do. And here's the beautiful part. When you start believing that, your relationship benefits too. In our final segment, we're going to talk about practical ways to let go of guilt and begin embracing pleasure, self-care, and intimacy with confidence. Because changing your mindset is one thing, but living it every day is where the real transformation happens. As we move into our final segment today, I want to talk about something that keeps so many people from experiencing the connection they truly want, and that's a shame. Shame is a way of convincing us that our needs are something to hide. It whispers things like, don't ask for too much, or your partner's probably too busy, or how about you should just be grateful for what you have. Over time, those thoughts become so familiar, we stop questioning them. We begin to believe that having needs is a burden instead of a normal part of being human. Here's what I need you to hear today. Having needs doesn't make you needy. It makes you human. Every single one of us wants to feel loved. We want affection. We want emotional connection. We want to feel desired. We want to feel seen, appreciated, and valued. Those aren't weaknesses. They're part of how we're wired. The problem is that many of us have been taught to feel embarrassed by them. Maybe you've wanted more hugs but didn't ask because you didn't want to seem clingy. Maybe you've wanted more intimacy but stayed quiet because you don't want your partner to feel pressured. That's understandable. Maybe you've wanted more compliments, but instead of saying something, you convince yourself that wanting those things made you too much. Can I tell you something? Your partner isn't a mind reader. As much as we'd love to magically know, they can't respond to needs they've never been given the chance to understand. Communication isn't complaining. It's inviting your partner into your world. Instead of saying, you never make time for me, imagine saying, I've really been missing spending quality time with you. I'd love for us to plan an evening together. Do you hear the difference on that? One creates defensiveness, the other creates connection. The same is true when it comes to intimacy. Instead of feeling ashamed for wanting more foreplay, more romance, or simply more closeness, try approaching the conversation with curiosity instead of criticism. You might say, can we talk about something that's been on my mind? I feel missing close to you and I'd love for us to reconnect. That simple shift changes everything. You're no longer placing blame. You're inviting a partner into a conversation about growing together. And here's a truth that I think is incredibly important. Your needs may change throughout your life. What you needed at 25 may look very different at 45, 65, or beyond, because life changes us. Careers, children, health, hormones, stress, grief, retirement. Every season of life brings new challenges and new opportunities to reconnect. That's why communication can't be a one-time conversation. It has to become a habit, one where both partners feel safe saying, here's what I need right now, without fear of judgment, without embarrassment, without shame. Because healthy relationships aren't built on pretending everything is fine. They're built on honesty, on vulnerability. They're built on two people who are willing to listen to each other and grow together. But if you're single, this message is just as important. Learning to honor your own needs now sets a foundation for every future relationship. When you know your worth, you're less likely to settle for a relationship where your needs are ignored. You'll recognize the difference between someone who truly values you and someone who only values what you can do for them. That's a powerful place to be. So today I want to leave you with one final thought. Imagine how different your life could feel if you stopped apologizing for taking up space. Imagine if you believed that your own happiness mattered, that your needs mattered, that your pleasure mattered, not because someone else gave you permission, but because you finally gave that permission to yourself. You deserve love. And yes, you deserve pleasure without guilt. So give yourself that permission to feel good. This is your empowering segment. Talk about permission, not waiting for society, not waiting for your partner, not waiting until everything is perfect. Permission starts with you. So discuss prioritizing your happiness, exploring what makes you feel confident, learning your own body, scheduling time for buying lingerie because you feel beautiful, using self-care products without guilt. So I want to remind you that feeling good isn't something you earn. It's something you're worthy of. So in closing, I want you to know that you deserve love, affection, and connection. And yes, you deserve pleasure. The more we let go, the more room we create for confidence, vulnerability, intimacy, and joy. So this week, I want to challenge you. Notice every time guilt tells you that your needs don't matter. Then replace that thought with, my needs matter too, because they do. If this episode spoke to you, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need to hear this message too. You never know whose life they're worthy of love, care, and connection. So until next time, remember this. Take care of yourself. Communicate with confidence and love without shame. And never forget, pleasure isn't selfish. It's part of living a full, healthy, and connected life. Don't forget to follow Spicy Vibes After Dark on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music, and now iHeartRadio, so you'll never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review. It helps more people discover the show and show our growing community. Until next time, remember, set the tone, feel the vibe, and never feel guilty for choosing joy, connection, and pleasure.